That down. Let's move on and talk about this, shall we? You know, I saw a headline that caught my attention. It said this. Joaquin Phoenix blamed for Joker 2 in damning report on movie's failure. Turns out that is not an accurate headline. Nobody was blaming Joaquin for it. But here's the basic story. And I want to get around to that Joker 2 is now a cautionary tale about why studios should never give total control to a director. Unless they happen to be a director like the 0.001% of directors who happen to be on the Mount Rushmore of the greatest directors of all time, you should never give total control over to the director. But basically in the story, they said, where did this idea for Joker 2? The report literally says this, that Joaquin Phoenix had a dream about it. And so they went and took it to the studio. Said, this is the movie we're going to make. Which now, that wasn't anybody blaming Joaquin Phoenix. That was just an interesting thing for him. But the real story is a little bit more interesting and a little bit more damning, to be honest with you. Now, of course, Joker 2, Joker Folie à Deux is a horrible, horrible movie. It's subjective if you are one of the people, because it's got like 30% audience rating, which means there are people who like it. And if you're one of the people that likes it, awesome. I'm not trying to degrade your opinion of it. If you liked it, that is amazing. And I celebrate that you did. I clearly did not. And clearly a lot of other people didn't. So we're just talking about it on those terms. But as a terrible movie that was a sequel to a brilliant movie, we ask a lot of questions. Why, how, and all that kind of stuff. Well, the hows and whys have become a little bit more clear, as these quotes are taken that basically say the same thing from both Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, saying this. Todd Phillips wanted nothing to do with DC. During the making of Joker 2, says one agent familiar with the director's unique carve-out, which allowed him to bypass any oversight from the brand's gatekeepers. Phillips was given an extraordinary level of autonomy, and he was given final cut, and they didn't have test screenings.
And he didn't even have to sell his own vineyard.
And he didn't even have to sell a vineyard to do it. They bypassed the studio heads. He didn't have to account to anybody. He had total control over the final cut. And they didn't even require him to have a test screening.
Bet he had the best parking spot, too.
And he had a great parking spot. I always have tried to impart this to my fellow film fans because one of our natural inclinations, because they're the names we know, right? The studio people, we don't know them. Right. We just know they're the man and we want to fight against the man, but we know the names of the directors. So quite often the discourse amongst film fans is let the director have all the control. You should just let the director fulfill their vision, to which I have always said, it is akin to, I want some remodeling done on my house. So you hire a contractor and then you sit down with the contractor. Now, let me tell you what I want with my house. And the contractor goes, no, I am the visionary. You just give me your money and I'm going to do to your house whatever I want to do to it. You would never let that happen. Why? Not because you don't respect the person doing the work, not because you don't respect the person doing the job, but it's because it's your house. It's your money. It's your house. Part of what your vision for it is should be you should be able to step in and say, you know what? I'm not really liking where you're putting the fridge in relation to the stove. It's your house. It's your money. You would never let a contractor do that unless you were on an HGTV show or something like that.
Right.
You would never let them do that. But what happens? Unless, again, it's one of the Mount Rushmore of directors, unless it's a Martin Scorsese, unless it's a Steven Spielberg, unless it's a Quentin Tarantino, unless it's one of those guys, the studio should never just give carte blanche full control to a director. Why? Because, well, this is what happens. You get a director who only said he would do it if, number one, I didn't have to answer to anybody. Number two, I have full control over the final cut of the movie. And number three, I don't even have to test screen it for anybody.
You know what's cheaper than $200 million?
What's that?
The word no.
It's a full sentence.
Like this, I'm sorry, but this is what happens, everybody. When there's no checks and balances, artistic creation is a collaborative thing. And when you say, I don't have to answer to anybody, I'm just going to do what I want to do. Now, look, if you want to do that, be Kevin Costner or be Francis Ford Coppola and make it with your own damn money.
Right.
If you want to make it with your own money, then yeah, God bless. You should have 100% control. You're the director and you're the financer. You should have 100% control over making the movie you want to make. But if you're a studio like Warner Brothers, I understand that they were in a position that they wanted a sequel to Joker. Every studio would have greenlit that. Every studio on the planet, even A24, would have greenlit a sequel. But would they have been dumb enough to meet the demands of the director saying, I want no oversight, I don't want to answer to anybody, I want to have total final cut, and I don't even want to have to test screen it for anybody. I get 100% control of this movie. You just cut me the checks. Because at the end of the day, if you're Abby and the heads of Warner Brothers Pictures, or even if you're David Zaslav, the head of the company as a whole, you just got to say no. You got to say no. Like, listen, we really want you to make this movie and we want to fund you and we'll even give you a $200 million budget. But here's the thing, Todd, it's ultimately our movie and we got to be able to say, we don't want the fridge here. We want the stove there. It's our movie. It's our money. We'll give you more control than maybe most directors, but final cut, no test screenings, no oversight, no notes, no reporting to anybody. And because I'm sorry, guys, this is what people often say, John, why are you so anti-director? I'm not anti-director. I'm just anti-director being given full autonomy. Because what you get as a result is Joker 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I ultimately think that Warner Brothers was smart to want a Joker 2. Warner Brothers was smart to greenlight a Joker 2. The mistake they made was agreeing to just cut a check and saying, we're just going to close our eyes and you tell me when we can open them and say surprise.
Joke's on you.
I mean, it's a disaster. It's an utter disaster. And this should be a cautionary tale to every studio out there. Don't fucking do this. Never do this. Unless your director's name is Scorsese, Tarantino, or Spielberg, maybe Villeneuve now. You don't do this. And the result is one of the biggest disasters ever of a sequel to a really beloved, great, successful first film. Anyway, guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, Miracle Made. Guys, it's hot outside and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. So if you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Miracle Made sheets are inspired by NASA and use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. There are just so many things that make these sheets so fantastic. We already mentioned the self-cooling properties for better quality sleep, but they're also self-cleaning. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. So go to trymiracle.com/Campea. That's TRYMIRACLE.com/Campea to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code Campea at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Campea and use the code Campea to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Campea to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Chris, you've read the comments. You've heard the quotes. The whole mess of Joker 2 continues to get messier and messier. What's your interpretation of all this? What do you take away from it?
Well, first of all, I would like to recommend our viewers check out a wonderful piece Screen Rant did talking about the who's to blame of this, where they do talk about the Joaquin of it, the industry executives of it, the passing of the torch, and of course, Todd Phillips. Having a director have quote unquote carte blanche is nothing new. We've seen this happen with Nolan. We've seen this happen with James Gunn to a degree, saying he had full creative control for Suicide Squad and Guardians and things like that. But these people, too, typically in the industry, still do test screenings. So the idea of them not doing this is wild to me. Of going, no. I know best. I know what I'm doing is bananas. I am typically on the side of the creatives, of the directors, of the writers. But in this case, I do always think that you should do some form of quality control.
And you should have guardrails.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the key
And
right
we've
there.
seen this, just to bring Nolan back in as an example, we've seen that Nolan gets notes on mixing or things like that of, wow, the sound is way too loud in this, or this does not work. And him going, no. I know best. And sometimes that works, and other times you go, what is this? Yeah, everyone sounds like a Peanuts adult, and you're like, what's happening? This is a really big, unfortunate thing if they did just go, no, we're going to let Todd do whatever he wants, and we're going to just not have any kind of, due diligence on this. Especially because Todd Phillips is great at original IP, not so much at revisiting it.
Yeah.
Sequels are
That's
not
his
his
pattern
forte.
now. Yeah, that's his pattern.
He does banger first films, and then when we revisit it, they decline in quality as we go. We've brought this up a lot on the show. Joker was not my favorite film by any means, but I absolutely understood why studio executives would want to come back to it. It made so much money.
And won so many
It won
awards.
so many awards. And you can't deny that Joaquin Phoenix is incredible in that first film.
Fabulous.
He is wonderful. So no matter how I feel about that overall film, it is a wonderfully executed film for what they wanted to accomplish. Just wasn't my cup of tea. So I completely understand why people wanted to keep mining this. This just was not the avenue. This just did not hit. And again, I appreciate when a film takes big swings, and I feel like this one tried to. It just got in its own way. And I think if they had some other folks come in and say, hey, what if we made the musical a bit more intertwined to the story? Maybe if we tried this instead, what if we did this so this had more meaning? This could have been a really great film for people who really enjoyed the first one, but it just falls flat because you need other voices. If you are in a room filled with people who only say yes to you, you are eventually not going to make quality products. That's just how it goes. You have to have no men in there too.
This reminds me a lot of there's a great story, and I might be getting a couple of the smaller details. The general gist is there. I would highly encourage you to go and look up the story, though. There's a great story when M. Night, this was when he was still at his peak. He was making movies with Disney. And he was getting ready to develop and make his Lady in the Water movie. Remember that one?
Oh, I'm trying to forget, but thanks.
One of the biggest pieces of garbage. Seriously, you know how I've got my unholy trinity of the worst films of all time? With
No, Chris.
I don't like it. I like parts of it.
Catwoman,
I'm sorry.
Highlander 2, and Battlefield Earth as the three worst. If the trinity was expanded to 5, Lady in the Water would be on that list.
Ooh.
I truly think it is one of the absolute worst pieces of garbage ever produced in cinema. But here's where the story comes from. So as they were gearing up, getting ready to do this film, and the script was done, and M. Night was getting to do it, the head of the studio had dinner with M. Night. It's again, this is a well-documented one, where she brought up some concerns. Maybe, I don't know, it'll come across as petty, obnoxious, and self-serving for the asshole to be a guy who happens to be a film critic, and he's going to be torn apart by wolves. I don't know. Maybe that comes across as obnoxious and pathetic and terrible. Oh, and how about this, M. Night? Maybe it comes across as the height of arrogance that the hero of the story, who is destined to save the world with their supernatural writing, is being played by you. Maybe that'll come across badly, and 1,000 other things. To which a debate and an argument ensued. And they went back and forth. And the Disney person was basically laying down like, no, there's a couple things we are going to require you to change. And M. Night said, you're never going to touch it. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And I will never work with Disney again. My masterpiece will be my master. And he left. So we went to another studio, and it's M. Night, who was really hot at the time, welcomed him in, and they made one of the biggest cinematic disasters in history. Because you had a filmmaker who refused to have anybody tell them no. And I think that's what we got here with Joker 2.
Oh man, that movie literally like made me sweat
because
I hated it so much during that.
I wanted
and
to
like Transformers 3 or 4 made me do the
God.
same thing. I was like, I'm so
I
embarrassed
wanted
be
to
here.
stand up and pee on the seat. Just as a way to punish the theater for even showing that crap and to make sure somebody else will be saved
reasonable.
from sitting in that seat
So
to watch
mean to the poor
movie.
16-year-old working at that AMC.
That's why. That's why.
Why did it happen again?
That's why I always pat my seat before I sit down.
Why is it
Just
always
double check.
gay?
Don't know if Campea has been in here.
Yeah.
Better double
God.
check.
Oh,
I just,
no.
and that's what you got here. And like, it needs to be collaborative. You need to have the captain of the
movie, not
ship.
the peeing. Okay.
But guess what? Captains of the ship have an XO and they have a first officer and they have people they listen to. And I think filmmakers need to have the same. And Warner Brothers should have said no. But they let him do it. And he ran off and made the movie he wanted to make without anybody being able to tell him no. And we got Joker 2. So anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Apparently, the idea for Joker 2 came from one of Joaquin Phoenix's dreams, and Todd Phillips said, I'll only make this movie if I don't have to answer to anybody, and I don't have to test screen it, and nobody gets to say no to me, and I get final cut. And look what we got. Anyway, however you feel about this, jump down into the comments section below, and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.